Islam, like a precious gem, has many beautiful facets. Explore with us now the facets of Islam. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. I'm Yusuf Estes, your host for Facets of Islam. Today I wanted to talk about something that might surprise you a little bit. When we talk about religion, you'd be surprised to hear this word, evolution. But that's not, that's not the facet. The facet that I want to talk about is creation. But what does the role of creation versus evolution play in Islam? Is there room in Islam to even discuss the subject of evolution? What about other religions? Consider this. In some religions, if you even say the word evolution, they're going to go white. They're going to say, ugh, don't even open up this subject. We don't want to hear about it. Others consider it and say, well, it's there, but we don't know how to resolve creation versus evolution. In fact, I found that the only one that really has the answers is Islam. And this important facet of Islam, creation, actually explains evolution at the same time. There is, according to Islam, a God, one only God, creator, sustainer of all that exists. And his name is Al-Khaliq. This is one of his attributes. He has many attributes. We call him his names, but it's still Allah. And this is one of the things that he does. Al-Khaliq, the creator. It means he is the all-creator. That means that no other creator is out there. There's no other creator existing anywhere at any time. If it exists, he created it. He created everything. The heavens, the earth, and everything in between. The mountains, the rivers, the streams, the plants, the animals, the humans, the angels, the jinn, all created by one, Al-Khaliq. But where does this subject of evolution come into play? Evolutionists, those who believe that everything evolved from something else, have a few theories that they can't really back up in proof. One, they talk about that everything all started out from a single mass. Then it exploded. And then after it exploded, that all of these other things came out of that and then basically evolved to what we see today. They explain life in a way that they talk about at one time the earth was covered in water, and then a blue-green algae began to surface all over the earth. And then from it came some type of amoeboids that began to eat this algae, and then some larger ones that ate those, and bigger ones that ate those, and eventually became fish-like creatures. Then these fish-like creatures developed large, what you call gills or fins, and they began to jump out of the water, jumping out, trying to catch these gnats and bugs and butterflies and things flying over, and that's how the first wings came about, by these things jumping out and using their fins as wings. They said it happened over millions and millions of years. Then they talk about some of the other ones who creeped up on the land trying to get food, and that eventually that their fins turned into like legs, and they became the prehistoric alligators, crocodiles, snakes, and things of this nature. And from there, these things began living in trees and so on, and then their generations evolved into others. And eventually we have these huge lizards that are going about the earth, eating plants of all kinds, and then other kinds of lizards that are going to eat them. And these are the dinosaurs and Tyrannosaurus rex. And the only reason I'm laughing is because of the way it's presented in the books. It's not that we as Muslims would denounce or deny that such things happen, but it's the way they go about trying to put it all together. One of the things that they say is that these fish-like creatures jumped out of the water, and that's how wings were first developed. They said they were jumping out of the water to catch these bugs, but they forgot those bugs had wings already. Where did they get this idea from? Where did they get this notion? You said these bugs or butterflies or dragonflies are flying over. Where did they get their wings? Where did they come from? And there's no answer. And when you talk about these things creeping up onto the ground, how in the world do you explain that their lungs changed from the lungs of a fish, which have to breathe in the water? They don't breathe oxygen like we do. How did that get converted? And then to talk about them becoming a bird, this is ludicrous, because birds are built totally different than fish. Completely. Ask anybody who's done even the basic study in biology and plant life and anything to do with animals. Just ask them, is it really logical? And unless they've been indoctrinated with these theories too heavy, they'll have to admit, well, there's no real proof. There's no incident in particular we can point to. In fact, in recent years, a number of scientists have come to the conclusion that there are certain things that just appeared on the scene. They did not evolve from something precursor before it. No. And they said there must be some intelligent design in the universe, and those who subscribe to that today are called, those scientists talking about ID, intelligent design. Now, they're not going to say there's a God. They're not going to go that far. Most of them are going to just say, well, there's something. There's some intelligence out there, and they're calling it ID, intelligent design. How long, I'm asking myself, how long is it going to take before they wake up and realize that that intelligent design is none other than the only God that ever existed? Let us look now to the Quran and see how the Quran deals with this subject. The Quran tells us that Allah created everything, and He brought into being the earth and so on, all from a single mass, one matter that He cleft it, and He made it go asunder. In other words, He did bring everything out of a single mass, but He didn't say He blew it up. He divided it according to His plan. And you can think about this and see what makes most sense to you, what Allah says or what a scientist says. Because if it's a blowing up, if it's just something being basically thrown into chaos, how could it come about that we have the beautiful universe we see today, with planets, stars, all in orbits, all going along their course as they go? This is what's described in the Quran about the universe. But according to the scientists who said everything just blew up, I'm going to ask him, just take a water glass and drop it on the driveway, on the cement, and what will happen? And it will shatter into millions of pieces, hundreds of pieces. Take another and drop it, and another, and they'll keep shattering and breaking up. And never one time out of billions of times is it going to happen that you drop a glass and it's going to split right down the middle and make up 2 glasses or 6 or 12 that are real nice and equal, just like each other. Never, ever happen. And if I said something like that, they would say, that's crazy, this is ludicrous, where do you get that? Say, from you. You said the whole universe blew up like that. Think about it. Now, without going too far into that aspect, I just want to come back now to what Allah tells us in the Quran about the earth itself. He tells us in Quran that He brought all life out of water. Now, this is 1,400 years ago. 1,400 years ago, He said He brought all life out of water, meaning exactly what we know now from archaeological studies, what we know from our scientists and geologists, that in fact the earth was covered with water. Yeah. And all life came from that. In fact, the human being is made up of water. Over 90% of a human being is made out of water. We know that. But we didn't know it 1,400 years ago, did we? Let's talk about evolution. I want to talk about evolution. According to those who claim to follow evolution theory, they would pretty much adhere to what I just described to you, and then they carry it a step further. They've got some creatures evolving into others and becoming marmosets, or the precursor to the monkeys. Then from these basic monkeys, they come up with these apes, such as gibbons, orangutans, gorillas, chimpanzees, and from them they're telling us that these are the precursor to the human being. Well and good. Only one clear problem. And a child asked me this one. A small child said, well, if there's evolution like you said, and if everything turned into these other things, and if humans came out of monkeys, then why do we still have monkeys today? Good question. If you still have monkeys, apes, gorillas, chimpanzees, if you still have these apes, then how do you explain that? You don't need a missing link between us and monkeys. You need something even bigger than that. You need a missing link between all monkeys and humans, and go back and find it, and there isn't such a thing, and they know that. In fact, there's no scientific evidence to connect the gorillas and apes with the human beings. It's a totally separate and different creation of Allah. Oh yeah. We had Dr. Fatima Jackson on our program in Washington, D.C. for several episodes, and she explained to us, and that's her background, by the way, and she's explaining archaeology, and she explains biology as well as these other sciences. That's her job as a professor at the University of Maryland. She tells us there has never been any connection found for anything to say humans came from these other types of creation of Allah. In fact, she says that these are different creations that existed at the same time. They all existed at the same time, but when there was more of one than another, they called it by the one that was dominant at the time. So if you hear about Cro-Magnon man, for instance, and you hear about the Australopithecine, for instance, it didn't mean that's all it was there, that they progressed one into the other. It just meant that that's what they found the most of for that particular time period. Now, reflect on that. Think about what I just said, because I want to take a break, and then I want to come back into this again and tell you more about the difference between evolution and creation in the facets of Islam. Stay right there. We're going to be right back. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Yusuf Estes, your host here on Facets of Islam. Welcome back. We've been talking about a subject that's pretty sensitive to some folks, the subject of evolution in religion compared to creation. Almost every religion out there claims that God is the creator, or their gods create different things. But when you come to this subject of evolution, that's when the hair begins to stand out on end and people start to get really excited. Evolution, how does that fit? Well, in our earlier part of this episode, we've already discussed that a lot of what's being said by scientists is not really fact. In fact, there's no real connection between some of the things that they say and what the evidence is. One of the top anthropologists and professors of anthropology in Maryland, we spoke about her, Dr. Fatima Jackson, explained to us in detail in several episodes that we had on our television show in Washington. And she said that actually these different time periods that they speak about, Precambrian, for instance, and the Australopithecine time, the Cro-Magnon time, and so on, all of these different time periods didn't have just one specific creature that they claimed to be the precursor to man. In fact, they all existed at the same time. But what they would find is there's more of one than another. And that when Cro-Magnon man there were more of those than there were, let's say, the Australopithecine, then they called it that period. But in fact, they did exist at the same time. She says there's a time when all of them were gone. There were no more. And then human beings came on the scene, separate, different, and not connected. This is exactly what we find in the Quran. Allah talks to the human beings in the Quran, telling us that He created others before us and that He totally destroyed them. We know that from the Quran that there have been others before us and that he destroyed them all. What were they like? He doesn't go into detail. What did they do? Again, we didn't find details, but the fact is that Allah has told us that he created us as human beings today in a different way, in a perfect way. And he says about it, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ, that he, in fact, is the creator of the human beings, and he created us in the best shape, the best way. The humans, as we know today, are the humans from now to the end of time. This also rules out, by the way, the little green men from Mars. It rules out space visitors and weird concoctions that people have come up with from other planets. Because the only two that Allah speaks about in the Quran are the jinn and human beings. The jinn, we do not see them. They're another creation created before Adam. They're made from a smokeless fire. They've been around a long time, longer than we have. They live longer than we do. They're different than we are in many aspects. But where they're the same is that they have free choice, and they can choose to believe or disbelieve. From them are Muslims. Some are Christians, others Jewish. Some are different pagan religions, or they don't believe in God at all. The important thing to know, though, is they have a choice, just like we do. They can choose to believe. They can choose to disbelieve. It's always up to them. Now, I want to come back to the subject of evolution. There is evolution mentioned in the Quran, and it's one of the names of Allah. One of Allah's characteristics described in the Quran is the evolver. He is Al-Bari. And Al-Bari means the one who takes something from one shape and then brings it into another shape, evolving it. That's one of the 99 names of Allah. So this solves it. You want to know about evolution? We know all about it. It's been in the Quran for 1,400 years. We didn't need Darwin to come along with his monkey theory. There was Islam. Islam has been there 1,400 years plus, telling us that Allah did in fact evolve many things. He brought this out of that, and that out of this. He describes it in the Quran. Read it. But he never said that he brought the human being out of a monkey. In fact, we know as Muslims the same thing the scientists are today discovering, that he created each thing in its perfected state. He didn't create an egg and then let it hatch open. That was not the normal way that he did business. The way Allah did it was to create everything by pairs. He created a rooster and a chicken. He created the lion and the lioness. He created a man and a woman. He created everything in pairs. We know that because he said that. Now the scientists have said to us, and these are the ones who are talking about ID, intelligent design, we mentioned in the first part of this episode. The scientists have found things now that have existed that just all of a sudden came on the scene, and they can't explain where they came from. They didn't evolve, they just showed up. No clue? I'll give you a clue. Look in the Quran. Read the final and the last revelation to mankind for yourself and discover. Discover who is the real Khaliq, Al-Khaliq, the Creator, Allah. And find out who is Al-Bari, the evolver, the one who evolves. It's Allah. Now, let's talk about the relationship between creator and created. Now we're talking about the things that Allah created, and we're talking about Allah the Creator. Some have the notion that Allah is the creation, that everything that exists is Allah, and Allah is everything that exists. Well, this is not Islam. This is called pantheism. To put God in the creation as a part and parcel of it is pantheism, not monotheism. Monotheism is to believe in one God. Now, some people today say, well, I believe in one God, and I believe that he is everything. That's still pantheism, no matter how you slice it. We know as Muslims, Allah is one, and he existed before creation. And he will destroy all of this creation, and he will still exist, and then he's going to bring it all back again in what we call the hereafter. But always Allah existed. He has no beginning and he has no end. The creation has a beginning and it has an end, as we'll all find out too soon. Each and every one of us has a beginning. I was created, you were created by Allah. We started out in our mother's wombs, in Arabic called place of mercy, by the way, Raham. We developed there, we grew there, we got bigger. All of this is described clearly in the Quran, from the point of conception to the trimesters. Even telling us in the Quran that the first thing that a baby gets is hearing, and then they get their sight. The eyes are developed after the ears. This is well known today in the study. Anyone who studies the development of the fetus knows that. However, 1400 years ago, people didn't know that, yet we find it in the Quran. How could anybody know this back then? Only the one who created it in the first place. What's our relationship? What is our relationship between us as makhluk, which means the created, and al-khaliq, the creator? Our relationship is this. We need to recognize he's the only creator, the only sustainer, and the only provider. And he's the only one who will forgive sins. And he's the only one who is going to give us the success in the next life. He's the one, Al-Khaliq, Allah. Think again. Evolution, creation, or both? Only in Islam. This facet, this beautiful facet of Islam, is the one that solves the mystery for the scientists. Want to know more? Read the Quran and find out about Al-Khaliq, the creator, and this facet of Islam. I'm Yusuf Estes, your host here on Facets of Islam, reminding you that it's only Allah that'll guide. So if you want to be guided, you need to ask him for that. But he can guide you and open you up to this beautiful message and cause you to be guided as well. Till next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.